Recording in progress.
Right. Take it back.
Not nearly as
No,
long.
no, you, sir.
No.
I'm gonna flow.
With all the moonlighting
Get down, get down.
So welcome to adjustable rate mortgages and assumptions. Two things that we haven't had to deal with since before summer.
Sure, yeah, no, I'll have it through.
But rest assured they are coming back around. And my purpose here is to teach you how to do it because some of them are going to be great deals. And you will start getting questions about them, especially, you know, once some clients maybe talk to some older folks like me that, you know, have done this in the past or down to the media fixes rate. So what is an ARM? By definition, adjustable rate mortgage. The interest rate is going to change periodically. You, as an agent, as a buyer's agent, you have to be careful as to what adjustable you use. There's different ones. Some of them will adjust yearly. Some of them will adjust monthly. Not a real fan of those. The initial interest rate, called the teaser rate, is set below market, way below market. Now, difference is because a lot of people, oh, this is what caused the crash. No, so, you've been to enough classes with me. I've gone through what caused 2007 a few times. Happy to give you those stuff later. But big difference between the early 2000s and today is, so far, that teaser rate is not the qualifying rate. Okay. It is just a 6-month or 1-year rate. The qualifying rate is usually the fully indexed rate or slightly below. Yeah, it's usually the rate for, and typically it's 6 months. I don't see very many that are longer than, are longer than 6 months. So some terminology you will discuss with your lender and your client. Adjustment frequency. This is simply how often the rate's going to change. Remember, every time the rate changes, the rate changes accordingly. Index. The adjustments are, each loan is tied to a specific index. Okay, it doesn't change indexes throughout the life loan. It's the same index. Okay, such as LIBOR, 11th district cost of funds, 10-year treasury bill, could be a lot of different things. 11th district is my personal favorite. Okay. Would you count that?
I guess.
Who's 11th district? It's simply another index that changes as interest rates change. They're managed to track. Margin is simply the lender property. Okay. So index plus margin is your actual rate. That's right. Now, these things cannot adjust and go up forever. Okay. One of the great parts about it is they have a maximum cap. They have a maximum annual cap and a maximum lifetime cap. Typically, that lifetime cap is going to be 5-6% from above the start rate. Okay, so like, let's say today we're at about, I saw one earlier at 3.8. Okay, so if that has a 6% start rate, it is never going to go above 9.8, even if rates get way out of control. There's also a cap. Again, it might be a 2% cap on how much it can increase year over year. And that's the most common one I see.
So that something that would be.
Could.
Yeah.
And again, it's going to deliver them a cheaper start rate they can get. They are going to save money. They're no easier or harder to get than a 30-year fix. But how many flippers are going to use a 30-year fix? Not many. So about the same to use an adjustable. If I had a guy that needed leverage, okay, and could afford it rather than go hard money, I would absolutely do it. You know, costs are less, payments are less, so the cost of money is cheaper. Good question. Ceiling is simply the top end. Okay. And very interchangeable with cap. The difference is the cap is the amount, whereas the ceiling is the actual rate. So you might have a 5% cap or 6% cap. That just means 5 or 6% over the initial. The floor, yes, they have floors because guess what? As we know, rates do fall sometimes. Probably not anywhere in the near future, but they can. So again, they have a minimum that they can take. And we talked about seasonal.
What would they, that would be in the contract?
Absolutely, absolutely. In the note, all of this will be explained in painfully great detail in your 24-page notes. Absolutely. But again, this is where your lender relationship is used. They're going to explain that to you and hopefully the plan as well. Yeah, in terms that they can understand. So since I'm a very visual person, and as a lot of people are, here's a good graph of average rates. The green is fixed. The purple is adjustable. Yes, we've had adjustables this entire time, even when we were at 2.5% FHA. It just didn't make any sense to do it. In fact, some lenders say no, they don't make sense to do it all. And they might be right. Not everybody is going to want or need an adjustment. But if you look at right now, again, this is 2018, it's a little graph of this on the right line. Where rates were sitting at the time about 4.5. Yes, just 4 years ago, they were at 4.5 and they went up a little bit before they started crashing. And adjustables were sitting in the high. Right now, it's a little bit more pronounced, the difference, but again, they pretty much track the same. And then the blue is how much a share of the total marketplace for adjustables. With the exception of as the market started heating up, pretty steady, about 15% of the market uses adjustable rate mortgage. Now this Rorschach test is, these are some of the indexes that we use all over the map, obviously. That's why it's very important to know what index you're trying to finance. Ideally, again, something that doesn't move a lot. Like if you look at, I know it's 11th district in white, you can tell. I mean, it follows the market, but it's not always the top. It stays in the middle very slowly. Always been my favorite. And yes, I am a proponent of adjustable rate mortgages for the right people. And we'll get into who those people are in a minute. So to understand why would we do that when your rate could go above what they are today? Okay. Fixed rate, we obviously know doesn't change throughout the life of the loan. Adjustable, it does, but again, it can go up, it can go down too. Okay. Especially in the last few years. Based on that paragraph alone, adjustments like that.
You took out an adjustable rate loan in 2008.
you had the cheapest mortgage possible for the last 12 years.
Right.
You had an adjustable that went down to 1%.
Mhm. Absolutely. Now, budgeting, again, can be a challenge, because especially if you got one of the ones that change monthly. But again, even yearly, you have to do some research, figure out what that's likely to change to, and then change your budget. All cheaper, at least in the first 3 to 7 years. Okay, historically. But again, like Ken said, you do that in 08, and you're writing predominantly a much cheaper payment than market. Different fixed rates, okay, yeah, rates are 6 maybe now. Difficult to qualify if the interest rates are high, and we have now a perception who years working with the buyer they were working with in January. They're pissed off.
Well, they have a lot of speed ordinance.
Right. They-
Forward.
A lot of them were full of excuses, and now they're full of higher payments and regrets. Okay, so yet new buyers, some of them might be peripherally aware of where rates were. They're a little more realistic. This is what I have to do. I'm either doing it at this or I'm not, or they're blissfully ignorant about the previous rates. And okay, let's go.
Or they're optimistic about inventory, right?
Well, and that's a real big plus too. I've got buyers that I was working with 6 months ago, and I've written a crap ton of offers on. Guess what? I'm putting those people in escrow now because, you know, we're going 30 offers to 4, and of those 4, you've got your obligatory flipper that's, you know, 15, 20% under market. You got the guy that's only going to pay asking price, and even on a counter's never going to come up. Then you got one that'll go a little bit over, and then sometimes you get a little wackadoo that still thinks you're in January, it's going to spend 150 over that. Okay. But that 4th one you don't get all the time, and those people are slowly being educated.
You guys are solution providers. Think about what the buyers are really feeling.
Right.
They're in shock. What the hell just happened? My payment just doubled. I don't qualify anymore. How can you help them? You are the solution provider. Your solution is, look, adjustable rates have changed and have become more safe for you borrowers. The reason is you don't qualify at the starting rate. You'll qualify at a higher rate. It's a much better product, but you can provide a solution, excuse me, for them.
Exactly. And a short-term solution, remember, historically, and well, yes, this number is going to change in a rising rate market, but the average lifespan of a loan, yeah, it will be going up, but still, it's not going to be 5 or 7 anytime soon. Okay, so in the short term, this solves that problem. Yeah, actually, almost like we did Simon said. Again, low initial payments. What is the biggest obstacle to a first-time buyer? Definitely up there. I'd argue payment shock. Okay. They're going from either living with mommy and daddy or, you know, paying rent on an apartment that's probably not real close to what they're about to pay. Adjustables minimize that payment shock a little bit more. So that's one of your target audience for one, but they're also the most vulnerable, okay, because they're not seeing what could be, okay, and that's something we go to our buyers, okay, is open their eyes to that. In a falling interest rate environment, that's all good, but we're not there yet. So what types of arms are out there? And pretty simple. I mean, there's a lot of variables out there, but your hybrid arms can be 3, 1, 5, 1, 7, 1, 10, 1. Options still.
We're getting off of
Now, hybrid arms are 30-year loans. Don't be confused by the numbers. But they're fixed for whatever that first number is, and then they convert to an adjustment. Okay, for the remainder of the term. And again, have a slightly lower rate, and then sometimes they'll have a really nice teaser rate. Then you have the option arm, and if you listen to me explain, yes.
So, if you say you want a teacher rate, and then it goes to some people rate, and then that term would be 3 years, 5 years, or 7 years.
So hybrid arms will not have a teaser.
Okay.
Normal conventional arms have a teaser. Now, the option arms, again, if you've heard me explain what happened in the crash, this was a reasonable time. Okay, there was a lot of people blaming us for it. No. All by itself, that's not going to save the economy. Like I said, I'll give you the Post-Notes version after class if you like. But the option arm, while the worst loan known to man has its purpose. I put my brother in an option. At least the brother I like.
The one you like,
Here's one I like, yeah. Now, and I'll explain why I did it in a minute, once we understand what it is. Every month you get a bill, or your buyer gets a bill. It has 3 options. Some lenders will call this a pick and pay option, because that's what you do. You choose which payment you're gonna pay. And as long as you make one of the 3, you're not late. Option 1 is fully indexed principal and interest payment. Tax and insurance if it's second is interest only. Your payment is only enough to cover the monthly interest. Plus taxes and insurance. Or the third option, that is where you get in trouble, is your negative option. That payment is based on a formula that will vary from lender to lender, but it is not sufficient to cover even your monthly interest. Then what happens? The next month, that interest that you didn't pay becomes principal. And now you're compounding. And now stuff's going to get ugly. Okay. If you do it once in a while, it's great if you have an emergency, you have a hiccup in income. You know, that's okay. But again, there's going to be consequences and repercussions for making that payment. Now, I'm going to be 55 years old next month. And one of the things that I've discovered over my almost 34 years in real estate is that people are horrible savers. They're horrible planners. And they're very whimsical with their money. Okay. Those are not the people that need to be getting an option on. A extremely small percent are great budgeters. They're very disciplined and can handle this. My brother is one of those people. For all of his other faults, he is incredible. He's better than I am. Okay. This man,
You break it, you buy it.
you're right. Have one in my drawer. In case I dropped it. He, very simple man, he makes pipe. Okay. My grandma always thought he was a pie maker. I said, "It was a pipe maker." Okay, that's another story. He's done it his entire life. He will be, his birthday is a week prior to mine. He's going to be 61. And he's a saver. Always had a bigger savings account than me. And I sold him his house in Visalia. Yeah, he put 20% down. He got him an option arm. That man made that fully indexed payment every month and sometimes more. Sometimes I talk about the whole principal reduction track. Yeah, incredible saver. His only weakness is he likes to smoke black tobacco. well, especially when it was completely illegal.
Mhm.
And he failed a drug test.
Oh,
Lost his job. And because he's a saver, he still made that fully indexed payment for a little while. As the balance became increasingly uncomfortable, and he made a couple of these.
oh, so you can switch up.
Every month you can make a different one.
Wow.
Then finally he made 2 of these before he got his own job back. Then I had to do some numbers. As disciplined as he is, math was not his best subject. Told him how much he needed to pay to get back on that 30-year amortization schedule. Took about 3 months, and he did it. He actually paid that loan off without refinancing. Because he consistently had a lower rate that I could get him. Refinancing went into effect, so what was the point?
Yeah.
He paid it off at 23 years. The initial interest rate in 1994, I can't remember which, was that 9 something? Single digits. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Single digit rates, again, to me, from my perspective, are still awesome. That's why I'm not freaking with 6%. When I was in high school, my mom was selling real estate. She was working for 33 years. We were doing deals at 21. I'm okay. And 81 was actually a pretty good year for the real estate market. You know, the rest of the economy is like Jimmy Carter, but you know, people were still buying real estate. Now, again, perspective, I was selling La Habra Heights at 100,000 instead of 1.3 million. But also, when I got my first real job, you know, 3 years later, I was making $3.35 an hour.
Yeah.
That was minimum wage back then.
For the longest time,
Perspective.
like 20 years.
So who is going to use it? Who needs to be in an army? Well, again, your short-term homeowner. Okay, and you're going to be surprised how many of those people there really are. Oh, I'm going to retire. Yeah, no, you're not. Yeah. Why do we put these people in our database? Okay, and market to them every month. To get a listing 30 years from now? No. Okay, yes, that's one of the benefits of it. Who's going to be in real estate in 30 years?
I mean,
If I'm alive, I
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, some of us, in reality, you know, we're talking about this, I can't remember if it was mentioned in here, it was just, we were talking about outside. But the reality of it is, we had 20-some people in this office, or in this room. And, well, somebody said, yeah, half of us ain't gonna be here in 2 years.
Yeah.
The real numbers closer to 85–90%.
Yeah.
That's a staggering figure. But and that's another thing, you know, maybe it's relocate. Guess what? You're going to work here for a few years, then you're going to wherever. You know, have those. That's another one. Or, you know, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to buy something bigger because I'm getting married, I'm graduating from law school, and this is going to be a rental. Okay, perfect. This is great. Someone expecting a bump in income, that guy graduated law school, or maybe they're, you know, he's going to get married in a year or two, now have two incomes coming in. And they can either, again, buy something else or refinance the 30-year fix if that's what they choose to do. You disciplined savers like my brother, or our buyers from January, that this is the closest thing they can get to that 3% rate. And they're just, they got to have that 3% talking about is what they missed out on.
We lost a mirror somewhere along the way. So I guess you gotta talk louder or think closer to the microphone.
That's probably, I probably just need to put this on.
Yeah, clip it on there. They don't need our color commentary.
Hopefully this
Peanut gallery.
works. Quan. So again, consider revisiting with those older buyers and adjust. Again, in the short term, it will work. Will rates continue to go up? Yes, in the short term. Then I believe they will level out and in a couple of years probably start dropping. Not to 3% again. Those days are gone and probably forever. It's honestly, this is it. 5 is realistically the bottom. 4.5 to 5. I don't know, Mark just quoted me one at 5.5, but that was last week. Gas was also 25 cents cheaper before I went to Vegas yesterday. So I have no idea where rates are today.
Fixed is at 6.175.
Things getting ugly, buckle up. But like Ken said earlier, ugly has a relative term. I'm loving this. I'm loving it for a couple of reasons. A, the ridiculous shit show of multiple offers is almost gone. Okay, again, from 30 to 4 or 50 or 60 to 4. I mean, I had listing last year, I had 72 offers on. I don't even want to look at 72 offers, but I have to. Imagine spending 3 hours looking at offers. You know, half of which you're not even going to count. Okay. But again, that's why I get paid 6%.
More than half, if you got 75, you're not counting 30 of them. Or do you end up counting 10 or 20?
That one I counter 16 or 17.
Yeah. So like a fourth of them.
Because again, I'm not a lazy agent where I'm just gonna send a multiple counter with no buyer's name and just high spec, no way. No, each one gets their own. Don't ever be that lazy agent doing that, because I guarantee you, each one has something else in it you don't like. Okay, whether it's seller's choice services or something silly they're asking for the refrigerator that you're not giving it, you got to address that too. So everyone gets their own multiple counter, but that's in contract. We're here to talk about loans. But yeah, so I'm loving this market. The other thing I'm loving about this market, I'm going to see more of later this year, probably next spring. Honestly, less competition.
Mhm.
Yeah, because by December, especially, unfortunately, the newer agents that I spend a lot of time with, hopefully not with us, but again, the numbers are what they are. A lot of those guys are going to be working somewhere.
Well, the part-timers who are just doing this.
The part-timers
side
in
job,
particular,
like, yeah.
they're pretty gone. The other thing I've noticed the last 3 to 4 years is people with older license numbers that kept their license active. Oh, it's booming again. I'm back. I have no clue what the hell I'm doing, but I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, and those people will be gone by summer. So great opportunities, less people in our way, less educating agents
Like next summer or this summer?
this summer.
This summer.
End of
You
the
think it'll be
summer.
that fast?
Those people will be gone because I said it a couple weeks ago here, Jeff said it again today. Today's market requires skill.
Mhm.
Most agents don't spend the time to get the skill, and almost no agents outside of Keller Williams in general takes the time to go get the skill. Over the last 4 to 5 years, if you can't trip over $100,000 a year, you're not engaged. You ain't trying. Okay. Today, it takes engagement, it takes trying, it takes talent. Okay. Here in this room is where you get that. there's what, 180 agents attached to this market center? You got 4 here. You got 5 or 6 on Zoom.
I've come every time.
Okay, right, yeah, you're here every time. So it's total,
Yeah.
okay, and
Who's learning?
It-
Who's learning?
I still wear. I still sit in those chairs too. You know, not as much in market center classes, but Gene Rivers here tomorrow, damn straight I'm in that class.
Yep, me too.
And I have sat in front of Gene Rivers for the same class 3 years. And I can get it really. Because
I
it's
met
like,
you in bold.
yeah,
You were in bold.
4th time in bowl.
Yeah.
You know, and even though Bolt has changed a little bit, MREI is on paper. We do. I've done it.
So loan assumptions.
Excellent. Thank you for keeping
I got a question about loan assumption. Are there any more, like, I remember years ago when we were doing investing with my dad, there was anything before like 1989 was assumable, no qualifying. You could just sign over and get those loans. Are there any of those left at all? Or no? Okay.
Those are long gone. Plus,
Those were
those
so
are all
cool.
paid off now.
Yes. Yeah, those were so cool.
So how does this work?
It was a different day back then, that's for sure. So again, by definition, this is a complete assignment of all rights and obligations of a borrower. Okay, that means the seller is transferring everything to the buyer, the seller's out, has no further obligations. There is a formal agreement that is recorded. The lender's fully aware of it, so you still got to qualify. And the lender's underwriting it and agreeing to it and saying, okay. Now, what's the advantage? Okay, let's say you got an FHA loan that's 4 years old. That's sitting at about 2.5%, 3%. Okay, I can't touch FHA under 5.5 right now. Okay, you're already saving yourself money. That's where we do this.
But not all the loans allow that.
So what is assumable? Rate 7. Government loans. Okay. You will find a couple conventionals here and there that are, but not many. Okay, but FHA, VA, USDA is owns out the sticks, basically.
Yeah, farmland.
And census tract driven, and honestly, I have never done it. I do a lot out in the sticks, and I've never had the occasion to do it. Conventional, again, typically not a complete full assumption. But again, FHA, VA, all that. VAs in particular, I think are better deals for us assumptions. Again, the stars got to line, but that's got to buy if that's property. But there's no mortgage insurance. There's no reason not to assume.
So a VA loan has to be assumed by a vet.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, FHA, again, just looking at credit scoring income balance, qualify for it. If you would qualify for it at 3.5% down,
Hang on, go ahead.
hang on, you're gonna qualify for it at, whatever is left on it. Okay, difference is you're going to need a little more cash. Because again, that loan's been paid down. So the 3.5% isn't gonna qualify. If you've got, just to use round numbers, $500,000 home that doesn't exist anymore. 3.5% down, you've got what, 16.5 or 17.5. Okay, but let's say that 4-year-old loan is 250.
Repeat the question?
So, well, the question is if you could do a second.
Oh, okay.
And yes, and we're actually going to get into that next slide or the slide after. But
She's getting ahead of the class.
No, it's clicking to my head.
exactly, it's starting to make sense. So in a situation like that, they might not have the cash to do it, and it's not in the cards, maybe. Except for maybe in a wrap or an AITD, which we'll look at in a second. But now let's say it's just a 1-year-old loan. Okay, so all you're dealing with is 10 to 15% appreciation. Okay, so maybe they have 15% down. But either they need the low rate to qualify or their credit size. Okay, those are your FHA buyers anyways. Perfect for an FHA loan assumption. Now there is an assumption fee, and it's usually a point, maybe two, depending on the lender. Again, I haven't done one in a while, so I'm not up to date on what they're charging.
I don't
But
think
they
anybody's
do
done one in a
charge.
while. In this market, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's no reason to.
Buyers.
But yeah, these are the people that would need to do them. So when are we going to use them again? First trust deed remains. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. But oh no, I missed the spot. That's why. Okay, so after this, it's supposed to be AITDs and wraparounds or wraps.
Okay.
Okay. AITD stands for All Inclusive Trustee. They're basically the same thing. So when do we use these? Situation I was saying, first trustee remains, but you know, there's like a 250,000 or some huge difference between that and sales price that the buyer don't have. So they get a second, purchase money second. Now, again, two ways of doing this too is an assumption and a wrap together. Okay, which you don't see very often, but they can happen. And that's getting FHA to do the assumption and allow the second trustee, which they will, up to their typical loan to value. Because again, why wouldn't they? They've got maybe 50, 60% LTV on their home. They're covered. Okay, it's the second mortgager, their mortgagee, that is taking risk. So again, that second is probably not going to go to the 96.5%. Okay, if you're getting outside, but your typical wrap is done with seller financing. Seller and those things are different. How many people have done or are aware of a seller that's just getting out of Dodge, taking his equity and running to Texas or Idaho or wherever?
But that is, if that's all inclusive, does that mean that in this group of finance, does that protect the seller is going to hold the deed?
Well, yes, and possibly.
It just not somebody can split up the payment of buying the home over a 2-year period
Well,
to avoid capital gain.
Yeah, now you're thinking. Okay,
I have 2 years.
Right.
My pipeline.
because again, if they're not receiving it,
Yeah,
it's not a gain.
that's what I can.
So the two ways to do this is as a first and a second, whether you're going outside for the second or the seller's carrying it back. Or this scenario, seller with a mortgage sells his home. The second is evidenced by an all-inclusive deed of trust. So there's a second deed that covers the first and the second together. Okay, so let's just use round numbers, 500,000. Purchase 250 balance on the first. Let's call it 5% down because I think like that right now. So $25,000 down. Okay, so there's 275 accounted for. That means that second is 225. All right. So your total loans are still 475, just as if you were going to do a 95 convention. The all-inclusive deed of trust is for 475,000, but that first deed of trust still remains. So if you look at a title report, you're going to see maybe $600,000 or $700,000 in trust. Okay, it's not going to make sense unless you know what an AITD is. AITD, you kind of ignore the amount because that covers both. And once that is paid off, both are released. Okay, because what's happening is,
I saw that on investment property and I was like, how is there so much money on this house? It's not worth that. Now I see what it was. Okay.
so I'm assuming most of you are under 4 years in business. Do you remember from pre-licensing what buying a property subject to a loan is? This is kind of what we're doing. It's an assumption without telling the first step. Okay, because there's an acceleration clause or an alienation clause in there, that if they find out, they can call the loan immediately to him. So while there's some risk for the buyer in that, because he may or may not be able to sell or refi and get out in time, the biggest risk is on the seller because that loan is still under his name and they would start foreclosure on the property and that will affect his credit. So depending on the motivation of the seller, again, it may not be an option, but it could. As the economy changes, you know, and people are urgent to get out of California, which a lot of people are, we're going to see these. Will we see a wave of them? No, but they're an option.
So this is only with somebody that already has a loan, actually, that owns it free and clear.
But if someone owns it free and clear, they can be the bank. And again, another great way to avoid capital gains is mailbox. If you're selling this an $800,000 house that's free and clear, but your buyer is having trouble qualifying for FHA for whatever reason. Maybe, I mean, Ben had his job 20 years, just doesn't pay his bills. Okay. If you put enough down, you're not going to get a seller to do it at 3% down, but you put a 10 or a 20% down payment, that seller's interested in mailbox money and not dealing with capital gains yet. Yeah, they're going into assisted living or living with kids or wherever. Right. You know, or yeah, you're selling to your kids. You can do that. There's also another option, the gift of equity. But also remember, you can transfer your property taxes from parent to child or your grandparent to grandchild. So keep that in mind, Prop 6, Prop 9. That's right. I'm sorry. Right. It was Prop 58 before that. So.
Yeah. No, everybody can. Thank you.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Prop what?
Prop 19.
It's only Prop 19, and that's only for the seller or the owner of the home to transfer their tax base, but it used to be generational. Like a big hospital south of Silicon Valley, they can't transfer that, you know, property. It used to be able to share with your generation that they asked it.
Right. Yeah, there were some changes on Prop 19 that was not of it.
No.
Plus they limit it too.
Yeah,
So, and we're going to see that limitation really where it's up the head because of the prices.
and they're trying to call it.
I certainly to do that. It was a bonehead move that they sold well, unfortunately. But so we're talking about seller carrybacks. Nothing prevents that seller from carrying back. Usually it's short term. You're very rarely seeing a seller carry back on a 30-year fixed, even a 15, unless it's family, unless it's, you know, they're doing something special. But it's usually a 3 or a 5-year fixed or you know, fully amortized due in 3 or 5 years. So they're still making principal and interest payments like they would on a 30-year fixed, but it's due short term. Or more commonly, it's interest only because calculations are easier and due in whatever period of time. I mean, I've got one that I personally did that was turned out to be 3 years. I think an extension that's due in July. So no, not even for family. It was what I had to do to get a very unique property sold for years in a good market. You still have properties like that. You know, this was basically till my title action is done, like, no problem. And which is one reason why I gave the extension, because again, yeah. Mutual benefit. And I really don't want to foreclose on this. But that's also the benefit for the seller. Okay, I'm making mailbox money. And if he doesn't pay me off, I just foreclose on it, resell it again for more money. I hold a deed of trust just like Bank of America would. So all I have to do is follow the same steps. And the Lord knows I foreclosed on the property in my tax. So, you know, I know the process. I have the forms. You know, 4 or 5 months, and it's mine again. And I go resell it. And, you know, I have no payments on it except for property taxes. You know, it's not a big deal there. Yeah, I'll sell it eventually. Depending on what it looks like then. Or I may do, in that particular case, what it was successfully tear down single wide, have a beautiful garage on a 10,000 square foot lot. Okay, ultimately, well, if I do have to do it, I'll just tear down the single wide, put in a brand new double wide on it, sell it for $350. Yeah, it's on a 10,000 square foot lot. You know, so for the area it is. Yeah, but again, it's kind of rather on, you know, your audience is small. But again, it's a great option. And the city's growing.
Yeah, it's growing all the time.
Really
Yeah.
growing all the time.
And it's
Urban
not,
sprawl.
and it's not just blueberries.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, now. It's not yeah. But again,
That's good.
options for everybody.
Mhm.
Okay. Like my favorite lenders, Father was saying, everybody can get a loan.
Yeah.
They might not be happy with how much it's going to cost them, but there's something out there, there's an option out there. So creative financing is what we call it, those days are coming. Absolutely, you know, if you don't know, and like I said, that's our job. We're consultants at the end of the day. And if, you know, and we can only consult on what we know. You know, so, and again, one of the things I love about this place is you have people that have been there, done that, seen that. You know, whether it's through mentorship or whether it's just, you know, having somebody, you know, like Eric or myself or whoever around about something else. You don't know until you ask. Excellent. Any questions on either topic?
No.
On Zoom?
Is that going to be, this is going to record?
This has been recorded.
Okay, I would like to do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
See you tomorrow.
Yes.
So,
Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah, no questions in there. Okay.
So I've done the audit on Cheryl. So I start 2:45.
Previous PowerPoint,
The one that we did first.
for the meeting,
Or is that just like
let me see here.
whenever we're on?
Let's see. This one here?
Yes. Yeah. Or is- Yeah, the one that had the password for,
Oh, you train graphics.
yes.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you what that is. Yeah, I have it. Yeah.